Alright, we got a super fun exercise today. I'm going to show you a trick which will allow you to clone and recreate any break. The lesson here is to learn the DNA or the anatomy of a break and using that to apply it to your own break using individual drum hits. By the way, my name is Stranger, and if you want to improve your music production and sound design, especially with dance music and drum and bass, then this channel is for you. Comment down below and let me know what other break you'd like to see me recreate. By the way, today's video is sponsored by Skillshare, but more on this later. Alright, without further ado, let's go right into it. Alright, so the first step to cloning a break is to drop an audio file of your favorite break into an audio track. One nice bar should be enough. And I'm using Alex Reese's break from his remix of Model 500. This is a great break because it is made from drum machines. So we can really analyze this break and then recreate it with our own hits. So essentially what we're doing is we're analyzing the DNA of this break, extracting the groove, and then applying it to our own drum set. Okay, so once you have the break in, what we're going to do is we're going to add warp markers for every transient of this break. And notice that in this break, the hi-hats and kicks are a bit loose. So you get this pre-transient here, which is the hi-hat, and then you get the kick here. That's what makes it snap. Okay, so let's keep going. Here's the snare, and notice there's this pre-transient and then the actual attack of the snare. So again, this is the hi-hat playing a bit earlier to the snare. And this was, again, is what creates that snap. It's interesting what happens when you have these micro dynamics in a break. It just makes things snap better. Here's another micro dynamic and then the hit itself. All right. And then make sure to add one at the very end of the bar. Let's just make sure it cuts it nice and sweet. All right. So we have all the warp markers placed. Next thing we want to do is just right click and slice this to a new MIDI track. And we're going to choose create one slice per warp marker. Click OK. And as you've seen in my previous videos, what this does is it adds each slice to a different pad on the drum rack. And then it creates the MIDI file for this break. So we can look at this groove and analyze it and look at the placements of all the hits. Additionally, what we can do is we can take this MIDI file and then choose extract groove. Right? And then this groove will be saved as a little groove here on your groove pool, and you can use this later on for other tracks. If you recall in my previous videos, the groove pool is where we apply different grooves and swing profiles to our MIDI clips. So this is a way to create your own grooves. Okay, so I'll just play all the little hits for you so you can actually hear every slice. That's this little pre-transient. There's the kick, hi-hat, pre-transient, which is the hi-hat, snare, another hi-hat, another little hi-hat here on a ghost note, another hi-hat, pre-transient, kick, snare, hi-hat. Let's listen to the break one more time and really listen to the individual elements that make up this break. Listen to what elements you hear. And what do you guys hear? Obviously, you hear the kick and it's in the snare. There's a t-t-t-t-t, which is a hi-hat playing on a counter. But listen carefully. There's one more element in there. There's a ride cymbal, and the ride cymbal fills all the gaps between the kick and snares, and it really colors the negative space. Listen to the hi-hats also. What's happening to the hi-hats? You hear this almost like pitching to the hi-hat? Well, what's happening is there's a flanger on the hi-hat. Listen to it again. You got to pay real close attention to the fine details, but you'll hear a flanger on that hi-hat. Okay, so now that we understand the DNA of this break, let's recreate it with our own hits. All right, so I have a drum rack here with a couple hits pre-selected. Here's the kick. Notice I've shortened the decay on the kick for a nice and tight kick. Same for the snare. Here's the hi-hat, and here's the ride cymbal. So we're going to use these 4 hits to recreate the break. So the next step is to pull in that MIDI file that we extracted from the Alex Reese breaks. So I'm going to pull this MIDI clip over to our drum kit. So here's that MIDI file. And we're going to use the hits here as clues to where each hit should be placed. Okay, so we're going to focus on the hi-hats first. I know that the hi-hat plays a ticker or a counter, so it should play on essentially every 8th note. So this, remember, was a hi-hat. So let's move this up here. This was also a hi-hat, and this pre-transient was a hi-hat. So let's move this down on this 3rd row as well. We'll place all the other hits after, okay? I recall this was a hi-hat as well, and this was also a hi-hat. So was this, and then here was a hi-hat. Okay, and this was a kick, snare, and this was a hi-hat as well. Okay, next we're going to do the kick and snare. So this was the kick, so let's put this down here. And this was the snare. Let's put this here. And this was a kick. And this was a snare. Okay, so now that we have the hits placed, let's listen to what we have. And we might be missing some hits here and there. We'll fill it in after. All right, to better visualize this, because we have some hits that are really short, hit the legato to fill in the space. Now we can see that there's a hi-hat missing in this space. And we can just fill it with a hi-hat with the same position as the snare. So we can hold control, click and drag up. Now let's look at this little ghost snare here. To help with the groove, let's bring the velocity down. Right, now let's fill in those rides. If you don't remember, we can go back to our reference and listen to the break. So it sounds like dun 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 tss, 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 dun 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 dun. So it follows this note, this kick and snare. So essentially it follows the kick and snare. So we can add a ride cymbal to follow the kick and snare. And actually what I'm going to do is I'll layer it in the same position as the hi-hat. So over here, and then one over here, one over here. So it plays in sync with the hi-hats. And since there's this little double ride here, we can play with the velocity of this one. We can bring this one down a bit for some groove. Today's video is sponsored by Skillshare. If you're a beginner, you want to learn the basics of music production and Ableton, then make sure you check out my Ableton Essential Exercises on Skillshare. I have a series of 5 classes where you'll learn the basics of drum programming, cutting up breaks, and also writing bass lines. And I just added some new additions to my Chopping Breaks 101 class. So if you want to get a few more advanced tips on cutting up breaks, make sure you check out that class. For those that don't know, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes to help you improve and expand on your creativity and passions. In addition to their music production classes, I encourage you guys to check out their graphic design, marketing, and even video editing classes. All essential skills for a musician today. The benefit of Skillshare is that there are no ads, and the first 1,000 people that use my link in the description will receive 1 month free trial of their premium membership. So check it out, and I'll see you at my class on Skillshare. All right, so now let's go back into our drum kit. Let's add some effects to our break. So first thing we can do is let's go into our snare, and we can open up this dialog button here. And under the snare, if we click on this R, we can actually add effects, like insert effects. So I have this Valhalla Vintage reverb dropped in the bottom here. I really just want to tuck it really low as more of an after effect. Okay, and the next step, let's go into that hi-hat and add that flanger. So I'm going directly into the hi-hat and I'm pulling the phaser flanger stock effect right into the hi-hat right after the hi-hat device. And I have it in the flanger setting here. So I'll play the hi-hat on its own so you can hear it. Notice that flanging going up and down. Just adds a little groove to that hi-hat so it's not so monotonous. All right, so once we have the break sequence, we can add some additional effects to glue the sound together. What I like to do is add some compression. So I'm using the compression to really drive the signal and really push all the elements together for that warm valve type sound. And then I'm added some additional distortion using Rift for some grittiness. So that's sounding nice and chunky. We can increase the drive if we want more chunkiness. And I find that reverb a bit loud, so I'm going to bring it down on that snare. So the setting here is over here, this column here. You want to bring this down. Now we can go into the break. We can additionally fine tune the groove. We don't have to use the groove as is. As you notice, some of the notes are a bit delayed. It has a really lazy or loose groove. What you can do is, if you want a more precise sound, we can adjust the hits. So here's a cool trick. If you highlight all the hits, notice there's this little marker at the end of the break. If you click and drag it, you can move all the elements relative to one another. So this is really handy. So you can lock this in so the hits are closer to the grid. That's pretty close. We can fill this last piece here. All right, that's sounding pretty groovy to me. All right, now that we have the break sounding nice and gritty, let's add some bass for some fun. So I'm using a preset from the Wubs and Wobbles pack. It's the sub-low preset. Let's play with the macros a little bit. That's sounding nice. Let's add some drive. I love playing with the macros in these presets. Hours of fun, and allows you infinite variation of sound. If you're interested in grabbing Wubs and Wobbles, check the link down below. All right, let's hear it with the break. All right, and once you have the break ready, you can always switch up the hits and kind of like play with the break, right? So what you can do is go into your drum kit and replace the kick. So I have this other kick here. We can just move it down here. I have this snare. Okay, and I have this other hi-hat. Let's hear how this break sounds like that. Let's switch up that ride as well. That one's good. All right, now that we have two breaks, we can switch between the two and have some fun with that. Oh yeah, drum and bass. All right, so just as a review, what we did was we took the break, we analyzed the DNA or the anatomy of the break, we added warp markers, extracted the groove to MIDI, and then we used that MIDI as clues to build our own break with individual hits. And notice the placements of the hits. Notice how some hits are a bit off. And this is what gives the groove or the DNA of that break the identity, right? It's all those little hits that are a bit off that gives it that groove, like this little ghost hit over here, or the little pre-transient hi-hats before the kick and snares. Makes this all such a groovy break. So try this out with your own breaks or your favorite breaks. Recreate your breaks with your own hits. This is a super fun exercise. All right, as you can see, this is a super fun exercise which can give you really satisfying results. Remember, the idea here is to understand the DNA of a break and then applying that to your own drum groove. Through this process, you're going to start understanding the intricacies of a break and how different hits are placed or misplaced. And then you can start creating your own drum grooves. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. All that helps my channel grow. Also, if you haven't already, follow me on Instagram and TikTok where I have additional exclusive content. Anyways, that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Keep practicing. And I'll see you at the next video. If you want to support, we got a new preset pack out with some big bass sounds. It's called Wubs and Wobbles. And you can check it out in the link below. And while you're at it, you can check out my other products as well. But if you're not ready to buy yet, remember you can download these products for free. Also down in the link below.